Could Carthage have won the Second Punic War? Hannibal Barca is without a doubt one of the biggest historical figures of the ancient world. He expanded Carthaginian territory in Spain, became the Sufferer of Carthage, was a guest in the court of the Seleucid Emperor Antiochus III, and waged an 18-year-long war against the Romans in their own territory, in which he would impose on the Romans no less than 3 humiliating defeats. However, his goal of defeating Rome for good never came to be. The Romans simply absorbed their military defeats on the battlefield and raised new armies, eventually turning the tide of war by winning the Spanish frontier and invading North Africa. After the loss of the Carthaginian army in Africa, Hannibal was forced to return to the continent of his birth, where he and Carthage were defeated for good in the Battle of Zama. Still, we should ask ourselves, if things had gone differently, could Hannibal have fulfilled his dream of crushing the Romans for good? Could Carthage have won the Second Punic War? Well, no. By the time the Second Punic War started, the territories Rome controlled already had a population of around 6 million people and could recruit up to 770,000 men. Those 770,000 conscripts on their own were more people than the entire population of African Carthage alone, and Carthage couldn't even recruit a tenth of that amount. However, just as they always did, they mostly hired mercenaries to fight wars, with only a very small core of Carthaginian troops present in their forces. Regardless how many mercenaries they hired, Carthage, when it comes to manpower, was outmatched. Hannibal knew this, of course, and so his plan for the war was to use this Roman advantage against him, by turning the many client states and allies of Rome to his side. This strategy is perfectly understandable for its time. After all, did not the many satraps of the Achaemenid Empire switch to Alexander when he conquered the East? And did not the ever so famous Greek city-states turn against one another at the drop of a hat? King Pyrrhus of Epirus himself invaded Italy some 80 years before and had success in finding himself some local allies. This strategy, at face value, made a lot of sense. However, Italy was different from Greece and the East. Hannibal did, however, manage to find himself some allies in his Italian campaign. The first ones were various Gallic tribes living in the north of Italy, who joined after he defeated the Romans in the Battle of the Trebia River, and he also accomplished this in the south of Italy too. However, in central Italy, he found almost no success in this, even after his most impressive military victory, the Battle of Cannae. Why? Well, before we can even begin to address the issue of potential Italian allies, we need to address the Battle of Cannae, as there are actually 2 different historical readings of the battle itself. The first is that it was a complete disaster for Rome, which, let's face it was. An army of over 80,000 men gone is always a disaster, no matter how you put it. With this utter defeat, Hannibal consolidated his political gains. By then, not only had he secured an alliance with the Gauls, but also the south, filled with Greek city-states and Samnites, had largely gone to his side. And so did Capua, the second largest city of Italy at the time. All Hannibal had to do was to march on Rome and take the city. So why didn't he? Well, to answer the question, we have the second historical reading of Cannae. The battle was also a disaster for Hannibal. After Cannae, Hannibal's army was depleted. You see, whereas Rome could replace their losses at will, Hannibal, operating with limited resources and in enemy territory, not so much. And hiding this option by marching on Rome wasn't plausible either, and he knew this. As great a general Hannibal was, there was one aspect of warfare that he absolutely wasn't particularly good at: sieges. The Second Punic War started when Hannibal sieged the Greek city-state of Saguntum. The siege itself lasted 7 months. Sieging Rome would likely take a lot longer than that, considering that Rome had far greater walls and a far more numerous garrison than Saguntum did. Furthermore, Hannibal was operating with limited supplies, and his army had no siege weapons to speak of. And Hannibal could not afford to wait for the city to starve out either, as There's already the possibility of the city never even starving due to the presence of the Tiber River, and also because it wouldn't take long for Rome to raise another army from its many client states and allies that would relieve the siege. While Hannibal managed to get himself some allies in Italy, Rome had far more, and most of them wouldn't betray Rome under any circumstance, even if the very city of Rome was being sieged. Why was this? Rome was a bit of an oddity. The nature of her relationships with its allies differed heavily from the standard norm at the time. While it was fairly common for the victorious city-state to impose monetary tributes on those it defeated, Rome operated in a different way. For the Romans, the tribute was men for wars that may or may not come. The Roman Republic did not raise taxes or determine the self-governance of its clients. Furthermore, the power of Rome brought benefits for Italy that weren't possible before, most notably peace and stability. The many Etruscans, Volsci, Umbrians, Sabines, and many more that composed the Roman allies to the north had been under the Roman sphere for over a century at that point, and all saw the Romans as the strong defenders of the Italian people against the Gauls, the very Gauls Hannibal had allied with. Even though Hannibal tried, they were never going to turn. The final numerous ethnic group that could have made a difference for Hannibal were the Latins. At this point in time, they were the most numerous ethnic group of Italy, surpassing even the Etruscans. The Latin tribes were subservient to Rome as part of the Latin Confederation. This confederation, however, only existed in theory at this point because the Latins had been given Roman citizenship a long time ago, making all the Latin tribes, in practice, a part of Rome. These would also not abandon Rome under any circumstance. The only reason Hannibal even found himself some allies in the south of Italy was because the people there did not like the Romans in the first place. The Greek city-states resented Roman rule, seeing the Romans as being nothing but barbarians, and the Samnites were Rome's greatest enemy before they dominated the Italic peninsula. The final major ally, Capua, only joined because, being the second largest city of Italy, the possibility of being the largest and therefore the most influential city in the peninsula proved to be too great a temptation. And to make things worse, these allies proved to be more of a burden to Hannibal than an asset, as these allies barely, if at all, supplied Hannibal with fresh troops, all the while being easy targets for the Romans who could easily undo Hannibal's hard work. Another potential scenario the viewer may be imagining, and I also am, would be about Macedon's potential contribution to Hannibal's war efforts. Through a mix of misfortune and diplomatic brilliance from Rome, Macedon was firmly kept out of the war in Italy. But even if this had not happened, there's very little to suggest it would make a difference. Macedon went to war for Illyria, not Italy, and even if the Macedonian forces could make it across the Adriatic, they would be surrounded by the swarm of 250,000 men Rome raised after Cannae, just as Hannibal was. The final scenario would be the Romans surrendering after Cannae, but this goes well beyond all plausibility. Being on the receiving end of disastrous defeats and refusing to surrender was pretty much Rome's thing. Up until the end of the Second Punic War, the Romans won wars not because they were better, but because they were insanely stubborn. Hannibal did send Rome an envoy to open negotiations for peace after Cannae, and all he got from the Romans was a demand he pay rent for the land he was occupying. Hannibal would never really damage the Romans after Cannae. His exhausted, barely reinforced, and rarely supplied army could do little more than guerrilla warfare at that point, and all subsequent battles fought in Italian soil would end in a stalemate, a result Rome could very much afford, but Hannibal couldn't. What Hannibal achieved was impressive. Throughout the war, it's estimated that over 300,000 Roman men were killed in action. A good chunk of this number comes from Hannibal's battles alone. Just the first 6 battles he fought amount to over 100,000 Roman dead. However, he could never defeat the Roman juggernaut. Carthage had its chance to defeat Rome in the First Punic War. However, they failed. The second time, it was just one brilliant man, facing a force far too powerful for him to handle. Managing to prolong this war by 18 years was impressive. Nonetheless, the outcome was predictable. Hannibal may not have known at the time, when he started the war, But from the very beginning, he wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to delay the inevitable. If you liked this video and would like to see more, please like, comment, and subscribe.